So we get on a team call and we're all launching Apple this day at a certain time. We got the whole team on. We're like, we're all going to hit this button together, and boom, we go live. It was a grandiose moment for us. When we get on there and we hit this button, and I'm not kidding you, we hit the button that exact moment, or that time was 6 p.m. Apple crashed.
Thank you for joining us on the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines. Entrepreneurs are expert problem solvers. Products, services, and entire companies are created to address specific challenges. The focus of this episode is Attorney Shield, which was designed to provide legal protection during police interactions. Company founders David Walton and Andy Chance were once competitors and now partners in a growing app-based legal service. Was Attorney Shield the app that broke Apple? Let's find out together.
Well, I obviously, we had that pre-interview where we talked, and I thought it was a great interaction. And of course, I do some research beforehand and got on the site, and then got into some related sites and looked around. And for each episode, I try to think about the narrative thread that weaves through the story, and every business, every person has this story. And the thing that caught my attention is and just going off of the website, there's so many people involved in your business from other places and I thought, that's the story. How did they bring these people together? Because I think the entrepreneurs in the audience are going to be really interested in that. Of course, there's lots of other things to get into. Can we just start off with what is Attorney Shield, the services it provides, and then we'll build on that?
Yeah, that sounds good. We can do that. Andy, you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, great.
Yeah, what's up?
Attorney Shield is effectively a legal service, right? But the app and the technology is sort of the glue that brings it together. But our mission and goal is to provide anyone a lifeline during any type of police-initiated contact, bring that lifeline to an attorney, right? And so it's 24/7, 365 access to an attorney for police-initiated contact. That scope is narrow for a specific purpose. We're not trying to, help people out with a state law or how to start a business or anything like that. We consider this emergency legal service, right? And so it's a situation where you probably need an attorney the most, but you're probably in a time where you can't get one, right? Even on speed dial on your smartphone. So even if you're a wealthy person, it's not likely at 2 a.m. your attorney that you pay day in and day out is going to pick that call up. And so what we do at Attorney Shield is we staff attorneys 24/7, 365. Right now, they mostly sit around and do nothing, but that's the necessary expense in order to make sure an attorney is available when somebody makes that emergency call. A lot of people aren't aware of what they have to do versus what they don't have to do. And having an attorney there who's sort of the professional who knows even more so than the police officer is a really good way of protecting people's rights.
Andy, walk me through your background and how you first got interested in this.
Well, so I have a background in originally general contractor, served on some boards here, mainly in the construction industry. Got into government affairs, ended up working for a Fortune 500 company in financial services. And that led us into, me meeting David on the road. We used to travel all over the place. And I don't know, there was a connection there that, he was just an upbeat guy. It was funny. And we competed against each other in businesses. And he worked for a competing company, and we found ourselves in dinner meetings and lunches and a host of other scenarios where we were competing for the same business and or had mutual clients. And so, that led us to starting True Intel, our first business together, which was in the government consulting and business practices from a sales consulting perspective, helping companies win government contracts, mainly contract capture in procurement. So David and I are sitting on we're heading up to, what was it, the Javits Center, David? I think it
Yeah,
was.
New York.
We're headed to the Javits Center to a FinTech conference, and we're at one of the airport here locally. And this gentleman sitting across from me at the time, he was probably in his late 20s, and he was, a little upset and down at the time. And his dad was, I guess, in the hospital. And I don't know where this gentleman was from, but he was headed north like we were. And he ended up getting a call. He was trying to get home to see his dad before he passed. And he got the phone call while he was sitting there, and his dad had passed away, so he didn't make it. So he really become upset about that, as pretty much anyone would. I know I would if I got a call that my parent had just passed and I didn't make it home in time. So this guy he's crying and he's got a snotty nose, and you just want to go over and give this guy a big hug. Hey man, we're here with you. We feel it. We all have this type of emotions, and we all lose somebody, and so we just really had a lot of compassion sitting there watching this gentleman. When we went to go to board the plane at the gate, they wouldn't let him on. And they told him, you're not getting on the plane, you're too upset. That actually made him more upset, to the fact that he couldn't get home. He said, listen, I need to get home and see my mom. My two sisters are there. My dad just passed away. And they just would not let him board. So they ended up calling airport police to him. So airport police comes and says, hey, you need to exit the gate and leave the building. And he's, he had a little resistance there. He said, hey, I purchased this ticket. My dad just passed. Now he's crying while he's doing this. So he's not very calm, but he lets him know that, hey, I purchased this ticket. My dad just passed. I need to get home to my mom and my sisters. And they said, you got to leave. You're coming with us. And they tried to grab him. That led into him saying, I'm getting on this plane. And then they ended up pulling up a taser gun, pulled it out, shot this guy with the taser gun, dropped him right on his face, right on the terrazzo floor in the airport, busted him wide open. And he just knocked him out. And then they zip tied his hands, put him in a wheelchair, and they rolled him out of there. And we're all just sitting there wondering, where's the compassion for this guy? What just happened? So we get on the plane, and Dave and I are talking, and man, there's got to be a better way. And at the time, there was a famous office company that had an easy button on their commercials. You just hit the button and it changed your office, and we kind of looked at each other and said, this guy needed the easy button. And that was the start of the attorney button. We was like, man, we put attorney on there, you hit the easy button, and the attorney comes and protects your rights. And then we sat down in a bar with a ton of construction workers who come in, and we were the only guys in there with suits. These were big guys all tattooed up, and they were just kind of crowded around us like, what are you two guys doing at our bar? And we sat there and just wrote on a napkin, and David had a little book, and we just kind of put our ideas together. What does this business look like, and how would it work? And so we wrote those things down. We ate chicken wings and a whole bunch of things with these guys. We gave them all this food that we had left over, and we left and came home, and that was the start of this journey with attorneyship.
There's more empires that have been built on the back of napkins than yeah. We need a book out there about the power of the napkin, because it's amazing what you can do.
It is. And I asked David, I said, man, did you keep that napkin? And I think he said he did. Maybe it's packed away, or he's at least got the notes in his book for sure, I think. But that's how we started this. And when you look back I think we've all had law enforcement encounters, and we've had good ones, and we've had bad ones, and maybe some not so good or not so bad. When I was younger, I was into customized cars, and that always drew a lot of attention. So there was quite a few times that I was stopped and searched, and I didn't know my rights. And the rights could have been, no, I don't want you to search my car. But I ended up sitting on the side of the road with them pulling my carpet up and tearing my car out, while I watched them do it, and never had anything, never been arrested for that or anything. And so having those experiences and then seeing other people's rights be violated, these types of scenarios really resonated with me when we thought about this business. Since then, I've been pulled over several times, and one with my daughter. We were on a 4-lane highway here where I live in our city, median divider in between it. And I was taking her to school. She goes to school about 35, 40 minutes away. the gentleman stopped me, the officer stopped me because of a school bus sign. The school bus was heading, southbound. I was headed northbound, and I kept going. Well, the cop stopped me because I didn't stop for that school bus. So we pull off the side of the road. My daughter's kind of freaking out because she just got her driver's license. So you got to picture her on the side of the car. She's crying. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get a ticket. We're going to get a ticket. I'm going to be late for school. Well, that turned into the officer coming up and saying, hey, do you know why I pulled you over? And I had maybe a thought of why he pulled me over, but I didn't know exactly why he pulled me over. So I said no. And he explained, well, you ran through a school bus stop sign. I said, well, there was a median in the road, so it wasn't an actual incident. And he went in to explain that it was a $250 or so ticket, one of my driver's license, all that stuff. So I gave it to him, and I told him he was incorrect. So he goes to the car, second cop car pulls up, and that officer walks up to the other side of the car. At this point, my daughter is really upset because she's like, there's another cop car here. And she's not scared of police, by the way, but it was just, an emotional incident to have the cops and officers behind you like we were in trouble. So she's never been pulled over before. And so that officer come up, was really nice. And we talked to her, and she said, hey, he's checking on that law that you mentioned, of the statute. So the officer comes back, hands me my license and my insurance, and then tells me he's going to let me go on a verbal warning because that median, as long as it was wider than 6 foot, that I was correct. So I told him, I said, well, I'm not taking a verbal warning because I didn't do anything wrong. And then he said, well, you're free to go. I'm letting you off on a verbal warning, or I'm not giving you a ticket. So I said, you're not going to let me go on a verbal warning because I didn't do anything wrong. But it was the fact that he just couldn't get over. He had to be kind of the one in power and tell me that he's doing me a favor when actually he wasted my time, scared my daughter, gave her, a really bad kind of scenario there of how the police treat us. And it wasn't that they treated us bad. It was a nice, pleasant stop, but it was the fact that, they were wrong and we were right, but they wouldn't admit that and say, hey, we looked at this incident. You were right. That was our bad. We all learned something today. You're free to go. But that's not how it transpired. So we've all had these types of incidents, maybe some worse than others, but that's really, one of the driving factors of how many other people out there are doing this, how many other people are having these types of incidents every day. If that would have been my daughter driving in the car and I wouldn't have been in that car with her, she would have got the ticket and that same scenario took place. She would have received that ticket. It would have messed up my insurance. We'd have had to hire an attorney. We'd had to fight this in court and go to court to get that ticket dropped. And meanwhile, this would have took, month, 2 months to do. So, and it would probably cause turmoil in the family because no one would have been there to witness it, to say, well, did you drive through, or, were you in the right, because you're going off of what the police officer says. So those are just a couple of things of how we went down this path and why we're passionate about what we do. But, certainly for me.
When I was really impressed at the team that you guys built. So of course, in your respective careers in business, you had contacts. And how I found out about you guys, and it took me a while to figure out. I was trying to remember, how did I find these guys? So because I work a lot with the law and policies, people know from previous episodes, I work in the insurance industry. So and I've always been the one, I like to read the end user license agreement, back when they were under 100 pages. When you get an update on your phone, people have no idea what they're agreeing to.
They have no idea.
And if they knew, we'd be back to soup cans on strings, if they really knew the information they were giving up. But I don't want to get out the tinfoil hat here, but there are concerns because there's a really lack of legal literacy. And in my job, I have to know the law. I don't have a choice, but it's really strange that someone whose job, you work in the sector called law enforcement, but they don't have even the enforcement branch don't seem to understand or to know the law. And I don't mean to be overly naive, but the operative word, if the first thing in your job is law, you would think they would have an operational knowledge. And of course, sometimes too, over the course of investigations, they're intentionally ignoring certain things as an investigative tactic, which sometimes for intense criminal situations is, might be necessary, but
right.
not for a traffic stop. But how I found you guys is I'd started watching a lot of I believe it was First Amendment audits, which
Yeah.
is I'm probably not going to explain it as well as you guys would, but basically people were recording in public spaces just to see how the interaction goes. Citizens, even though there's cameras everywhere, and we walk by 1,000. This is the part that just blows my mind.
Blows my mind too.
You walk past 1,000 cameras from the moment you go from home to Starbucks. If you opt to pay $12 for a cup of coffee, and then into your office, you've probably went past 100 cameras. But a person on the street holding an iPhone or any kind of device, citizens immediately get upset, and I find that very odd because again, there are tons of them. It's just they're not as obvious. So these people always get verbally assaulted. The police quite often get called. And in at least, let's say 50% of the police interactions, the police don't even know that this person can publicly film. That's why there's all these cameras everywhere. But that person sometimes gets victimized by the police, and it creates lawsuits. And so the auditors, I understand now, fulfill this very important function that helps the police get educated, because a lot of police departments and individual officers have been shamed by not understanding the law that they're supposed to enforce. And then there's also Second Amendment auditors that go out and wear weapons in certain situations. I'm an avid freshwater fisherman, and a lot of people don't know that in the state of Florida, whether you're hunting or fishing, I can open carry. And people don't know that. So, and I don't normally do that, but I could if I wanted to. But I know that people, even in Florida, would respond shocked that I'm, open carrying while I'm out on a kayak of freshwater fishing. But I certainly can if I want to. But again, the citizens don't understand, and then the police.
The sad part about what you're saying is there's so much to unpack there, because we say all the time, the way even citizens, but especially the police, treat someone when they see a weapon. We're a Second Amendment country, right? It's your right, but you're immediately viewed as a threat. And I don't understand how that dichotomy can exist here, but it does. And, but anyways, I don't want to derail when you talk up, there's just so much in there to unpack.
Well, and God bless the auditors, because I don't know how long auditors have been out there on YouTube. I've only noticed it. There's the one guy that's really funny. He's the First Amendment auditor, and he does voices, and he just messes with me. Because it's an absurd situation that he's in, and it's
to begin with,
he's trying to make light of it, even though it's kind of a sad situation. So I've only seen auditors I've only been aware of them the last 2 or 3 years. So I made a positive comment on one of them, and I said, wow, this, it was a relatively good interaction. Because not all the auditors are professional. There are some auditors that don't do a good job, but most of them do a pretty good job. And I was just leaving a positive. I said, wow, this was really informative. And I'm pretty sure this is what they said, because I could not find the comment. I went back. And they said, well, if you like this, you need to get a hold of Sean Paul Reyes from Long Island Audit. And I've worked in New York. I'm a catastrophe adjuster, so sometimes I have to go on site. I was up there for Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy. And but anyway, so I believe through researching Sean Paul Reyes Long Island Audit, I found you guys.
Right.
And then I realized he's on your team. So can you get me up to speed with how he got connected with Attorney Shield?
Yeah, we're going to blame that on Andy. So Andy's really good at getting a hold of people. And so, when we started this journey, starting with the napkin, as soon as we came home, I couldn't help it. I just started watching these videos. And clearly, Sean Reyes and his Long Island Audit sort of floated to the top of the list of some of the best content out there. And, when you speak of auditors, they're successful because it just seems that, first off, auditing should be well known to government officials and police officers. And the reason why they're successful in what they do is because the cops can't resist. I don't know why, but it's like a bug to a light. They know reasonably that this person isn't committing a crime, but it's like there's just this almost like this automated thing where I have instinctual thing where I have to engage this person. And then if you don't like what they're saying or if they don't listen to you, then it sometimes escalates. But we found Sean, and I was impressed by the way in which he handles audits. He's probably the most professional auditor out there. He never gets hot. He is very sort of even keeled. He gives the law enforcement and other government officials no reason to sort of grab him or arrest him or accuse him of being difficult. He almost got a buy one, get one free because he and Dale Hiller with the Lackluster channel, the Lackluster Media channel on YouTube, which has a larger subscribership than even Long Island Audit. They are friends, and so they know one another. They were already thinking about ways in which they can collaborate. And Dale Hiller's content is a little more different. He's not an auditor; he's a documentarist. So he does FOIA requests all day long, gets these videos, shows shows the situation, does commentary along the way, and basically gives you a sense of all of these traffic stops about how they could have gone different if the police officer was professional or whatever. And so we brought both of those guys in at roughly the same time because once Sean was convinced he wanted to be involved with Attorney Shield, he says, well, we need Dale too. And so we met with both of them at one point, explained sort of, where we felt like we could have a partnership. And that's how both of those guys got involved in the business.
And that's great that they have a lot of eyes and ears because that's reach. A lot of people starting out, and I'm on a bunch of forums, as I'm sure you guys are too. And when people ask questions about starting out, because I've started like you guys, I've been involved in a lot of different things. And the starting off, the toughest part is the reach. You either have to spend a lot of time or a lot of money getting the eyeballs, or and this is what I tell people, the only way around that is if you collaborate with somebody that has a big audience. So a great book, and I've mentioned it across several podcasts. I'm gonna have to reach out to him and ask him for a commission. But Jeff Walker's book Launch, which is a fantastic book, and he's a brilliant guy. He talks about people that don't have maybe don't have much of a reach or an audience. The joint venture launch is the secret to that. So you collaborate with someone, make sure that they're adequately compensated, but you partner with somebody. And of course, that seemed brilliant on your guys' part too, because not only do they have a reach, their audience is your demographic. So exactly. I think that's the perfect. So Andy, how much premeditation goes into that when you reach out to those people? Because somebody asked me, I was talking about this show yesterday, and I was explaining, Attorney Shield, and they were like, wow, how did you get those guys? And I said, well, I just asked. I just reached out, and I think that's Andy's strategy, and I said, yeah, I said, I'm really glad to have them on because there's, I said, we could probably do 2 episodes on Attorney Shield because I said, there's so much going on there. It's our rights. It's their entrepreneurial journey. It's that great partnership between these 2 charismatic guys. And I said, there's a lot there. It's exciting. And I said, I just wrote them, and they said yes, So Andy, is it the same way? Do you spend a lot of time on that initial contact?
Well, I'll speak with Sean specifically. I'm real similar to you. In the last 2 to 3 years is when I've heard about all this auditing, watching these shows. Now they popped up in my feed, no clue. I typically watched it on Facebook, and it was many a nights, and you're sitting there during hurricanes and tropical storms and nothing to do kind of thing. And, you get into these rabbit holes. So one Sean video pops up and then it's like, boom, 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 boom. And then, over 2 or 3 years, you feel like you know this guy because you've watched so much of his content and it's so good. And you've learned so much. And I've learned a lot from Sean, and the officers that are involved and other officials, some good, some not. But, with Sean specifically, I reached out to him that first time, as David mentioned, and didn't get a response. But here again, I don't think we were ready for him at the time, too. That's right. It was a little premature. you know, kind of fast forward 2, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it was. And then I reached back out to him. I think it's, sometimes we talk about stars aligning. Some people believe in that, some don't. I can be either or depending on the situation. In this instance, the stars kind of aligned because at the time that I reached out to him, he responded right away. And that was through a Facebook message. Just clicked him on a message. You know what? I think it was maybe even through his email. I sent him a message through Facebook, and then I think his email was on there at the time, in there to contact for support or whatever it was. So I sent him a message, and he responded to, "Hey, man, we were thinking about something just like this. Love to talk to you guys." And I was actually kind of shocked that he responded back.
And you bring me into a great point. I'd like to get briefly into because I have friends that have ideas for apps. I have some ideas for apps, nothing that I think would make me rich, but there's a couple apps I would like to see that I know that I would pay for. I don't know how. I don't think there's much of a large market for it, but talk me through. And I would assume, David, this would have been your wheelhouse in acquiring the talent for the app, because of course, that's the critical component of Attorney Shield is the phone app, because that's the face of your company interacting with law enforcement during these stops. Walk me through, how long did that take? Did you already have people in? Because the reason why I ask that is because I know it's a pain. That's probably a pain point, and people need to understand that you don't just get on Upwork. Even though there are great people on Upwork, and I've hired them too, you can't just get a developer and then 21 days later you have an app approved on the Apple Store. Can you tell us the truth of what it really involves?
Well, I want to chime in there real quick because I'm that person that you're talking about right now. I thought, I want to build an app here. This thing's going to be quick, and you just get an app and rebrand it. Basically, wrong. Wrong. I learned wrong. So, David, I'll let you take that one. But
no,
yeah,
I appreciate that,
Andy.
Andy. I think that's when you're starting these things, you always hope that, because that's the easier route, and we always want the easier route, but that's just not the way it works. The first thing I I used to teach business information systems at Columbia College. I did that for about 10 years, part-time as an adjunct. And one of the key messages that I would tell the class was tech doesn't drive business. Business drives tech. So you can build the baddest ass tech. I'm talking just clean and reliable and gorgeous and beautiful. But if it doesn't serve a business purpose, you're not going to make any money, right? It's got to be commercialized, right? You always hear, when people are developing technologies, oh, that's cool, but how do we commercialize it, right? And so first thing, just make sure that whatever app you're looking at building has a business model behind it, right? Because if it's just a cool idea for cool tech, that's not enough, right? And so what we knew immediately after the napkin event and everything that sort of led to that, and what we did afterward, is that we had a really good business model, a unique business model, and one that could scale almost to every adult in the United States, and eventually maybe even around the world, right? But that was the basis for how to go about building the tech. And the thing we thought we'd find, like Andy said, is we thought we'd find something that was like that was close to what we were doing, like a telehealth app that could be whatever. And what we realize is that there's this business in particular, being that it's in the legal services market, has an extremely complex regulatory and compliance environment that we had to contemplate. And there was nothing that we could buy off the shelf and sort of modify to make that happen. And so we ended up building this thing from scratch, right? We have a solution architect that we hired on the side to manage that, right? To manage at least the direction that this would take. And so we didn't want to sort of hire a bunch of developers and this, that, and the other, not right out the gate. Eventually we will get there, but we wanted an experienced company to do this thing. And so we this was a breakneck speed. We effectively did this thing in 5 months, right?
No way.
Yeah, we did it in 5 months. But
I would not have expected that answer. Yeah, that's a shock. That you must have really been.
It
Yeah.
was breakneck, and it was extremely difficult. I've never, so I've been in product management before in previous lives with, when I worked for Fidelity and FIS Global and even Constellation Software. And you don't build technology that quick,
No,
right?
you don't.
But there's one way. I think part of it is that when you're working for a corporation, you don't build it that quick because you're dealing with a different set of expectation, a different structure, whatever. And what we did is we said, well, we need to build this thing in 4 to 5 months. Let's see if we can do it. Versus if I were working for somebody else, I wouldn't even have contemplated the fact that you could build something that quick, right? And so, to me, one aspect of business is if you limit your imagination or if you limit your the skills that you think you have. Oh, I'll never learn math. Well, then you'll never learn math, right? But if you just say, hey, look, the business needs this to happen in a certain period of time, let's solve for that. And we solved for that. Now, I'm gonna tell you what, it wasn't easy. I mean, Andy can tell you, it was extremely difficult to do, but we did it. And so we're building the app at the same time. We're building the back end at the same time. We're building the administrative portals and the consultant portal at the same time. We're integrating to Google Maps. We're integrating to Google, their address verification. We're integrating to Twilio for the text. We're integrating to Mailgun for the emails. We're integrating to Stripe for the payments. We're integrating to just a number of other things that we don't want to build ourselves that make sense to, sort of use the utility of. But the other challenge is it has an app component, and your business is 100% dependent on the fact that you're depending on Apple and Google to approve your stuff. And where we thought we'd run into issues with Apple because Apple has been known as the tough guy out there, and maybe because they've got a few lawsuits right now, they've let up on that. But our issue ended up being Google. We actually got the approval for Apple a month before we got the approval on Google, right? And so we were waiting on Google, right? We're waiting on the Play Store.
Stressful.
But what it does though is there's something to think about when you're building an app, and that app is what your business is dependent on. Is that part of your entire business model is baked around making those guys happy and playing their games and going by their rules. That is a concern with everybody who has an app out there, is that they have to sort of kiss the ring of Google and Apple. And if you rub those guys the wrong way, your entire business collapses. And so we hedged for that, but these are all the things that you need to be thinking about.
That's
Hey, Robert,
that's fantastic. Go ahead.
I want to throw something in there. So you're gonna like this. So talking about being reliant on these two. So we get on a team call, and we're all launching Apple this day at a certain time. We got the whole team on. We're like, we're all going to hit this button together, and boom, we go live. It was a grandiose moment for us. Well, when we get on there and we hit this button, and I'm not kidding you, we hit the button. That exact moment, or that time was 6 p.m. Apple crashed. It went down. This was, a couple months ago, or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was.
So they had
It
outage.
it was March 28th or something like that. But Apple had a 2.5 hour outage that occurred at 6:05 p.m. and we had just hit the button at 6 o'clock. Right? And so we were like, well, it didn't release. It's not out there. We can't. And then some people on the team, well, I can't even get to the App Store. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so I go to, because I'm running the console, and I go to refresh my screen, and the whole thing goes blank. It doesn't it just spins. And then we go out to those websites where you can see if something's down, and like Apple's lit up like a Christmas tree, and all these people are reporting the outage on this service. And we didn't go live actually until roughly 8 p.m. that night, because Apple, they're literally, I think it was about 90% of their infrastructure, of their ecosystem rather, so that was, interesting. And then we had people on our Discord saying, "Oh, Attorney Shield took down Apple," but whatever the case.
It's completely coincidental.
Yeah, but our launch was literally delayed because Apple went down, and this is the dependency that a lot of companies have. And so when you think about it, if you have the ability to hedge for those things, you should. But that's just an example of something that was outside of a lot of people's control that happened. And so we're supposed to launch at 6 p.m. and it wasn't until 8:25 or something like that when we were able to actually confirm the app was live. Right. So interesting
we had
story.
no clue what was going on. I mean, this is the first time that I could ever recall, and I know it's happened before, but it's the first time I could ever recall that Apple has been down on service. So it was just not, in my thought process that this was a real thing. But when that happened, we didn't know what was going on. We were like, what just happened? I mean, you should have seen us all. We were shocked, scared, happy. We didn't know what to do and what to expect. We just knew that that thing crashed literally and we hit the button or it went down. I say crash, hit the button and it stopped. So it was just one of those moments where we were just, it was a gut wrenching start. Like, oh, this is how the rest is going to be.
I just envision this conference room full of empty pizza boxes and empty soda bottles, maybe beer bottles too, and tears, gnashing of teeth, tearing of the shirt, But you've probably seen on my channel that I'll do like a book. You have a title and a subtitle, and I put the subtitle first and then the title second. And
that's interesting.
That's nice. I won't spoil it, but I think you just gave me my subtitle. I won't say what it is, but because I want it to be a surprise, but I'll put it in there because I think that's funny. Yeah, sometimes you have those odd turns in the road, but you had perfectly predicted my question because I was going to ask, that moment of elation when you were able to download the app. And so there was a little bit of a delay there, but you did ultimately get on, and 5 months is, for the developers out there, that's just, that's blindingly quick. And of course, in the SaaS industry, software as a service, speed to market, particularly for publicly traded companies, if you guys already know, but maybe the audience might not know that speed to market is really critical, particularly publicly traded companies that are involved in SaaS. So speed is the name of the game. If you're the first, you can kind of get the territory. And so that's a great point there. What about, because you said there's so much to unpack there from those previous statements, but I'll stay focused on the other piece of the puzzle that builds the foundation of Attorney Shield is the firm that you hired. And again, doing some research for the episode, I looked at this guy and I thought, wow, I looked him up, checked the reviews, and you partnered with an extremely experienced and highly, because law firms, you normally go on and check their reviews and check their background. And, it's this real, even good attorneys have this mixed bag, but the feedback that I've seen on the attorney's office is consistently high at the upper echelon of Florida attorneys. So can you take us through a little bit about how that relationship began with David Bigney?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Andy take that, but this is another one of those inflection points where the universe sort of just, but Andy, please, because we didn't know Bigney 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, through one of the companies that I work for, the Fortune 500 space, financial services, I ended up meeting a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Kilman, really smart guy, really intelligent, great personality, knows everybody, and he owns a really successful lobbying firm. He's an attorney. He's got his own fund, VC fund, and so I reached out to him to do some lobbying services for the company I was working for at the time, and so we ended up building a relationship over a short window. And then when David and I broke off and went into the True Intel side, we were kind of that government relations services, and which spun into Attorney Shield. I ended up one of the original folks that I reached out to for guidance on this of how do we do this? What is the real path here, for the business from a tech perspective? And Jonathan was that guy. So I reached out to Jonathan Kilman. He's based out of Miami, Florida. And he ended up we set a meeting with him a couple of times, and then he said, "Guys, I want to introduce you to an attorney, and here's why." And he gave us that reasoning of why he wanted to introduce us to Bigney, because he and Bigney had a similar concept. They had wanted to create something similar to this from a tech perspective in this exact type of space. And he goes, "Guys, this is it. We want to do this." So we jumped on a call with Bigney, kind of, fell in love with the guy because he's, got a really good character. He's funny and extremely outgoing. He's got some really awesome, interesting cases behind him. We set up the call, and, the rest is history. We've been working with the guy ever since. We just brought him right in and become partners with him.
And like I said, highly rated. And he's got, I think, if not, he's probably this year he's reaching 2 decades in the courtroom, if my math is right.
He is. And so there's some interesting aspects about Bigney that makes him kind of ideal for this business. So he has a criminal background, and generally what we're trying to deal with is criminal situations, right? Criminal and traffic, right? If you think about it. But so he's very knowledgeable there. He put together the curriculum for the legal first responders that all of them have to go through in order to hit the floor, if you will. And that's where they all report into to a certain extent. And but one thing about Bigney is he reached an inflection point where he's like, well, how long do I do this courtroom thing? Right. He was asking himself that question before he even met us, how long do I really want to do this? This doesn't scale, if you will, meaning I can't even find a guy like me to take over the law firm, and I get to go ski more, right? That type of thing.
How many billable hours do I have left in me?
That's exactly. How many billable hours do I have left? And if you think about it, the consulting world where you're just billing hours, that's a tough business. And it's not a business that is even valuated, from a company valuation. You don't get a good valuation from that type of business because it is billable hours. It depends on butts and seats. And I think when he saw, because Attorney Shield effectively is a tech company, right? We have a technology that just happens to connect you with an attorney, but the tech is really the glue that makes it happen, because there'll always be attorneys, but there won't always be tech and a process baked around making that happen. I mean, if you think about it, Attorney Shield goes on record, as far as I'm concerned, as the one company that'll get you to an attorney faster than anybody else in the world, right? Good luck finding somebody else doing what we're doing, right? And so with that in mind, when Bigney saw this big business model, it was his opportunity, right? And he has just been a gentleman and a very flexible in whatever you guys need from a legal operations perspective. I want to be your guy, right? Because he sees the business as his future, not necessarily the law firm as his future. Now, the law firm plays a role in that too. Like his law firm will grow as a result of Attorney Shield, right? All the attorneys that are the attorney who's on now is a part of his law firm. And so he went from himself to all of these other attorneys, even though they're not working on his cases, they're working for the benefit of the member, the Attorney Shield member. But it fit into sort of this place where he was searching for something, and we came along and bingo, that's it, right? So another one.
Good timing. Right? Good timing.
What's next for you guys? If you don't mind doing an end cap on this, and let's just talk briefly about the evolution of the business and what's next, or exit strategy, because let's be honest, guys, if you guys get enough eyeballs, somebody big's going to swoop in and buy you out. That's what I like. My sense is that's a highly probable, and are you guys open to that? So for the people out there that are thinking about getting into SaaS, talk us through what's next and possible exit strategy.
So I'll let Andy talk about sort of the exit strategy part, because he's dialed into that more than I am. I'll talk about what's next for the business in general, because my focus is continuing to have this business grow while I'm involved. So the goal here is to maintain sort of the police initiated contact for the foreseeable future. But there are so many tendrils that sort of can come off of this thing. And when you look at our roadmap, the first thing that I want to get to is I want to get to a certain level of scale with respect to our members and the activity that those members produce by requesting service. So is it a traffic stop? Is it a accident? Is it a domestic situation, pedestrian, otherwise? And what's the disposition? Did somebody get arrested? How did the cops behave during the situation? Because we kind of track that. Was the responding officer professional? Were they hostile? Were they whatever? And we track a few other things too. And this is all updated by the legal first responder as a means of sort of, we call it a post-incident report, right? And all of this data is in the system and aggregatable. And so there's a data and analytics part here, right? And there's also geolocation tied into that. But, I look to a future of at least a data and analytics aspect of the business where we heat map where all this stuff is happening first off, and we heat map it based on filters of all those things that we talked about. But if you think about that sort of scaling across the United States, because we are national, and being able to see where some of the most hostile jurisdictions are, or being able to see where some of the where there's a concentration of arrest or a concentration of civil rights, or not civil rights, the concentration of observed rights violations, right? Because we track that. If the attorney observes that somebody said they didn't want their car searched and the police officers brought in the dogs and did it anyways, we see that as a rights violation because there's really no probable cause to do any of that, right?
And it's worth interjecting that your service will actually, the net effect here will be an improvement in the quality of the interactions between. So this is not an anti-law, but you're actually going to improve and evolve these departments. I think that's worth saying.
We're already seeing that actually, and so the deal is first off, this type of information isn't tracked centrally anywhere today, which is kind of sad, right? Like you can go out to the DOJ's, survey, right? They do a police contacts report every year, and it's always about 2 years late anyways. And then you can go out to each state's DOT, and they've got accident information or crime information. And even there's a database that the FBI manages that will give you statistics. But, police agencies it's optional for them to participate. And so the data is just really terribly aggregated. It's just very disparate, and it's hard to sort of make heads or tails. And most people give up when they're trying to really get a national view of what's happening. And so we hope to change that. But we also do hope to change how interactions are working anyways. Part of that data and analytics is and you need a bit of scale to do this, but how are we changing those numbers over time, right? Are we seeing fewer arrests for resisting arrest, no other charges, right? Are we seeing fewer of those? Because there should be fewer, right? Are we seeing fewer vehicle searches that don't have justification? We should be. And so the data and the analytics is part of this. And then there are other things where we're not trying to tread on what some of the people in the online legal space to do, like a LegalZoom. We're not trying to help anybody start a business, but we do see an aspect of the platform being able to support other professional needs in real time. Are there other industries that can benefit from this type of tech, right? And so I went beyond a lot of other things on our roadmap, and I went right to the most distant, right? And that most distant is bringing professional expertise into a situation in real time as quickly as possible, because we can all use that. There are times where I'm sitting here working the books and I can't get a hold of my accountant. But what if I could just hit a button and ask an accountant professional, hey, I'm trying to move this bucket of transactions to this bucket, and it's not. You can't get support in many companies that way, right?
Andy, take us through what's next.
Well, David and I were both from very poor families, and when we started our first business, True Intel, and that spun out of Attorney Shield, we thought, where does this company go? And David's always had this thought of, hey, man, I want to ring that bell on the stock exchange and go public, go IPO on this thing. We still have that want and that need to do that. With that said, we talked to several financial folks, just like you were mentioning before, and all of them said you'll never get there because you'll be acquired. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like that's a good thing, but at the same time, it takes a little bit of maybe one of our dreams away, and it doesn't mean that we got to sell. Would we be open to it? We'd certainly be open to an acquisition down the road. Right now, we're about building this business, helping the people, and really kind of fundamentally changing the way legal services are in our communities nationally.
There's just a number of things that we want to do with this business before we walk away with it.
Sure.
And I also want to build the business different than I've seen other businesses operate. And what I mean by that is, first off, we're a completely virtual organization. There's no reason for me to make people drive into an office, right? And that benefits people at the end of the day. And it's sort of a green initiative if you care about that, right? But the other thing is just about treating people like people, treating them right, treating the way that you want to be treated. And I believe that so many companies get that wrong. And I want to prove, as a leader, I want to prove that you can have a viable business model, one that's extremely profitable and that is helping people in the moments where it matters most, right? Because we're an incarceration country. We have the highest incarceration rates. And to me, we have a role in sort of reducing people being shuttled through the judicial system and jailed, right? Because half of those people probably didn't deserve to be jailed. We're the country that has the most exonerations based on, misconduct by officers and false evidence or shitty, investigations, right? And so where we see ourselves as sort of a helping those people.
So in wrapping up, help us. How can we find you? And my video editor, Devon, he'll put the links up on the screen. So can you give us your URLs and how we can find you?
Yeah, sure. The easiest one is attorneybutton.com.
Attorneybutton.com. Okay.
Yeah, that'll resolve to attorney-shield.com. You can also find us on the app stores under just search for Attorney Shield, right? Both on Apple and iOS. That'll pop right up. If you want to become a member on attorneybutton.com, you can review and purchase one of our plans. We're running a discount right now at 10% off plans. Plus, I'll give you a coupon code. It's called AS10, right? AS10. That'll get you an additional 10% off. And we'll be running probably that discount code for the foreseeable future. But if you don't want to go to the website, if you're just a mobile guy and you just want to go to the app and buy, you can register and purchase a plan through the app. And when we say purchase a plan, we have an individual plan where if it's just you that you want to protect, great. But we also have a family plan that bundles 3 people or more. You can buy up, right, more. And you register your account, and then you go in and add what we call your sub accounts. And all those people become members too and get the same protection as you do. But that's how you find us.
Fantastic. We'll have to do this again. I didn't even go down the rabbit hole of the Sixth Amendment. this whole page I didn't even get to, but no, it was great. I mean, fantastic to meet with you guys again on the pre-show. I knew that this was going to be exciting, and I appreciate your time joining me on a Saturday. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch up with you again.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, Robert.
See you on part 2.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines, and we appreciate you stopping in and checking out the channel. If you would, please click like, subscribe, hit the notification button, leave a comment, share the video with someone. We've got some fantastic episodes coming up. Also, too, for today's guest, check out the description to find out more about them, and also look at the links that we've posted below that for ways to get connected with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.